I'm a big fan of B movies. I just love camp. And so today I wanted to talk about a film that I'm kind of surprised I haven't seen this one before. It's called Robot Jox. This came out in like 1989 and it was directed by Stuart Gordon. And if you don't know this guy, he's mainly known for making a lot of like B-movie cult horror films in the 80s and 90s. He did several adaptations of H.P. Lovecraft stories, such as Reanimator. That's probably his most iconic film. And then he did Dagon. He also did another movie I remember quite well called Dolls, a supernatural killer dolls movie. So in Robot Jox, Gordon takes his love of artificial creatures like dolls and puppets and brings it to a larger scale in these giant mechas in the film that fight each other in gladiator-style combat. And he was inspired by Japanese cartoons such as Transformers to make this film. He wanted to do like a live action version of these giant mechas, which hadn't been done before. At least in an American production, it hadn't been done before. So the plot of the movie follows a typical dystopian narrative 50 or so years after a nuclear holocaust. The surviving nations, one of them is called the Market, which is basically America. The other one is called the Confederation, which is basically the Soviet Union. They've now outlawed open warfare. So disputes are decided by building these giant robots and having them fight each other in gladiator-style combat. And the champion of the Market is called Achilles, and the champion of the Confederation is called Alexander. These two throughout the movie have an ongoing feud. Also, by the way, most of the names of the characters in the movies are taken from Greek heroes and gods. I think just to drive home the fact that this is a futuristic version of the gladiator fights of Rome. In the opening scene, we get our first taste of some of the robot action in the movie, and we are also introduced to the character of Alexander. When we first meet Alexander, this guy is like clearly unhinged and insane, and I just wonder like who decided to have him pilot this giant war machine.
You're next, Achilles!
He's just hilarious to watch. We are also introduced to probably my favorite character in the film, Tex Conway. He sports like a cowboy hat and speaks with the most outrageous, like hammy southern accent I've ever heard in a movie.
The goddamn Eskimos!
The plan is to replace old timers like Achilles and Alexander with these superior genetic specimens called Gen Jocks, genetically engineered to be superior pilots. And one of them is a woman named Athena. And she develops kind of a romantic connection with Achilles, which doesn't go anywhere. But I mean, she's mainly there to get in between his feud with Alexander. There's this whole scene where she drugs Achilles because he doesn't want her to face off against Alexander. But she's like, damn, if you're gonna stop me. So she drugs him and then hijacks his robot. She's like fighting off the guards. It is so badly choreographed, and there's one scene where she's like kicking. It's like the fakest kick I've ever seen in film. Well, I mean, maybe not the fakest, but definitely like the top 5 like fakest on-screen like karate kicks I've ever seen. Like this certainly is right up there. I mean, I was like laughing hard. Back to Tex Conway's character. I love the twist they do at the end with his character. There's a spy who we discover is feeding the Confederation special tactical information on the Market's robots. We discovered that the spy is Tex. He tries to pin it on the scientist Matsumoto, this Japanese scientist. For one thing, I love the fact that the American tries to blame it on the Asian guy, then he turns out to be the traitor himself. The scene of his capture is so awkwardly handled because he like escapes and then ends up committing suicide by plunging to his death down one of the robot shafts. And no one makes much of an effort to like prevent him from jumping, but anyone could have like caught him. But yeah, it just like a lot of the fights in the movie, it's kind of awkwardly like choreographed and unintentionally or maybe intentionally funny, but it definitely had me laughing. Regarding the special effects, because they don't have CGI, in order to create the simulation of movement for the robots, they have to use like stop motion animation. And the thing about stop motion animation is that I've always had like an uncanny reaction to it. I'm not sure exactly why that is, but I think it has to do with the fact that you have an actual like physical prop or puppet, but which is made to move in lifelike ways. But because of the limited technology, when it moves, it always looks kind of mechanical or artificial. So it's kind of like the uncanny valley kind of idea where I'm having a strong visceral reaction to the actual like puppet, but when it starts moving, it looks so artificial that there's like a disconnect there. And this is no diss on stop motion, because I think it like works very well, particularly with like a horror film. Like if you're doing like a doll, it can create like an uncertainty whether like the doll is alive or not. Is it animate or inanimate? So I think stop motion is like perfect for that. In the big finale, Achilles goes head to head with Alexander. They have a big robot mecha battle. It starts on the ground and then goes up into space. It happened so quickly because they were on the ground and seconds later they're in space. And I was like, wait a second, how'd they get there? What the hell is going on here? But it was kind of cool. And again, with the special effects, they are very low budget, pretty bad. But I am kind of impressed with the sense of scale they were able to capture with the robots. Robot Jox is a bad B movie, but it's a fun one, and it was kind of influential on later sci-fi when Del Toro's Pacific Rim came out. Robot Jox was kind of an influence on that movie. At the time, Robot Jox was the first American-made live-action giant robot film ever made to that point. Robot Jox is a great movie to watch in a group. I mean, you'd have a lot of fun. It's a lot of it. Throughout it, I was laughing my ass off.
Get it.
Alright, that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.